Welcome to a very special episode of Hobby Time in the Murder Basement, where today I'm actually the person getting interviewed. I got asked to be on Uselesswizard's podcast, the Miniature Podcast, which you should check out. It's fantastic. And we took turns interviewing each other. This episode's going to be me. The episode later in this week's going to be him on my show. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you for being here.
Welcome back to the Miniature Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Today's guest is Heath from Hobby Time in the Murder Basement. How's it going, Heath?
It's going very well. Your voice, just like you went into pro mode right there, and
Yeah.
It was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, don't get me started on my customer service voice. It's even more scary. So for those of our audience who have no idea who you are, which I can't imagine is that many if they've been paying attention to the hobby podcast world, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name's Heath Aldrich. I have been doing miniature painting for the last almost 3 years, and I started off in the middle of COVID, trying to find something. My wife stayed home and worked, so I needed to do something to stay out of her hair, and starting a podcast seemed like a really good idea. And I've been doing it for a little over 6 months, and it's all loose, free form, conversational style podcast, kind of more in the lines of like a Mark Maron sort of. You just dive in and you talk about the shit that you love, and it's been really cool getting to know everybody, and because that was what we were supposed to do at conventions this year.
Yep.
And now I have given a different view of some of these streamers and YouTubers to an audience that were in the same boat. We're hoping that they could meet these people at cons and never could. And so just kind of being a little bit more altruistic and bringing everybody in, and trying to, increase the visibility of the hobby, and just also make people just feel more comfortable in the hobby too, because when you realize that Vince Venturella, besides being a machine, is a human, you're like, whoa, okay, this is really cool. And it's been really special to be a part of it, and the Twitch community has just been super cool to be able to get into and enjoy everybody's company, because I've never been in any community quite like it.
It's a really unique and very special community, and I'm super proud to be part of it. I'm super proud to both as a streamer and as an audience member. It's a wonderful place, and I really appreciate the fact that you started your podcast with the desire to humanize these people that we look up to, like Vince and Miniac, and all these different people that I suffer from fangirl moments. Like when I first saw Vince, I was like, oh my god, that's Vince Venturella. I want to say hi, but I can't because it's Vince. And I only knew him as someone who was on YouTube, and these types of podcasts that you're doing is I think really helpful for getting people to be more comfortable with realizing that these people are real people and they like nerding out about tiny little plastic army people just like we do, which is awesome.
Well, and just hearing, when I was talking with Jason Slowfuse, all I've ever known is Pro Acryl Paints and Monument Hobbies, and just the fact that he is really funny on stream, and he's talking about being an old punk rocker, and he did all these band things and started a record label. I'm like, this is amazing. I totally forgot that there was something before miniatures here to learn about, and stuff like that. Where else are you going to run into that? And the fact that so many people have been honest and open, it's unbelievable.
That's fantastic. Yeah, just learning more about the people behind the hobby personas is a huge thing. And I very much appreciate the window that you've been able to provide into a lot of these people's. So it's
Thanks,
been a
man.
lot
I
of
really
fun.
appreciate that.
So let's switch focus to you and your hobby. How did you start painting miniatures?
Regardless of what it looks like, this is not beer. This is ginger beer. It's soda. um, I I had to quit drinking a couple years back,
Okay.
because I had a massive bleeding ulcer,
Oh
and
wow.
I had to run into the idea of my health or my health or my sobriety sort of thing, and or my health and sobriety versus continuing to just casually drink all the time, and it wasn't going to work. The alcohol was a huge part of why I had an ulcer, and it was the huge trigger of all my pain, and so I had to quit drinking like that, which I was not ready for. I was emotionally not ready for what that did to me,
Hmm.
and so I was just kind of like left with all this like weird unbridled energy because like I was drinking to keep my ADD down. I was drinking to keep
Okay.
the noises in my head down, and and I found myself like just kind of lost, and I I don't even remember how I stumbled on Kingdom Death, but I saw Gorm, that weird little angler
Oh
fish
man.
baby thing, and it was just like I just saw that face and I was like, "What the fuck is that? Like, what is that? This is
It's
amazing."
that's exactly what I thought. But I thought I was like, what is that?
What?
That is the
What?
ugliest thing I've ever seen in my life. I hate that model. I hate it. I'm
It's
glad you
it
enjoy it.
it's one of those that like it was so I mean, it messed me up when I saw it. I was like,
Yeah.
I have to see this. And so I was like, I had a buddy who had always been trying to get me into Warhammer. And I was like, dude, Kennard, tell me about this miniature painting thing. What's it like? And he's like, I hate it. And like, he's worked at Games Workshop. He's used to like having to paint. And for him, it was hate painting. And I
Okay.
was like, yeah, but I think I could do this. Like, is it hard? He's like, no, it's just like you have to be in the right mood. And I
Hmm.
was like, I think I'm in the right mood. So I sold a bunch of stuff. I bought Kingdom Death. I bought Gorm, and I just dove like headfirst into the deep end. I didn't even check for rocks. I just like, well, here we are. I'm diving in,
Yeah,
and
the
it's
rocks
it
should
was
have been like the $400 monster, the Kingdom Death monster starter, and the fact that Gorm exists. Those were the rocks, and you're like, sweet, I'm gonna grab
like,
onto these rocks and I'm gonna bear hug them.
yeah, that was basically it. And almost 3 years now. It's just
Wow.
been a huge part of what keeps me sane. It allows me to get to that flow state, something that like video games used to do
Yeah.
and do not to me anymore. I like it's the thing that turns my brain off. And like but also like expands it at the exact same time.
So whereas most people that I've talked to have gotten involved with the hobby through Warhammer and Space Marines or Dungeons and Dragons, for you it was Kingdom Death. That's really interesting. Um I can't, because most Kingdom Death models are fairly intimidating as far
Yeah.
as the number of pieces they have, the complexity of the builds and the sculpts, and the fact that you saw that. What was your thought when you first opened up the box and saw how many pieces make these models up?
I didn't know any better,
Okay.
like if you start learning Japanese in a predominantly English speaking country at a young age and you don't know that Japanese is not the language that you should be learning, you're going to just learn Japanese. So learned like people were complaining about Malfo and I was like,
Hmm.
"Oh, this isn't bad. Kingdom Death is like way worse." Like everything about a hobby for me was just like, "Oh, well, you guys, I don't know what you're talking about." And like everybody's like complaining about easy to build stuff and like, "Oh, you can't pose it." I was like, "Who cares? This is beautiful. This is great. Like easy to build is the way to go." Like I'm actually thrilled that things are getting easier and more dynamic because like building some of that stuff was yeah, it was hard.
Yeah.
Like there's no instruction manual to do it. Their
Yep.
website is garbage. Like you have to figure it out and
It's really
it
bad.
was yeah, if I ever get to talk to Poots, I have some words for him.
Well, maybe they need a technical writer and a like a technical graphic designer to work together, and like this is how you know did you ever take any of those classes where like write the instructions on how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? Did you ever
Right.
take any of those classes where you like walk to the cupboard, use your left hand, open the cupboard, use your right hand, grab
Right.
the, step by step, that kind of technical writing? Maybe they need to hire somebody to do that for their for the assembly instructions,
They
cuz
definitely do. I
well,
had a friend who wrote a book about the step-by-step instructions on how to buy the right bra for yourself, and it was one of the funniest things 'cause she broke it down to, like, that sort of level. I was like, "I was not ready to learn this much about buying a bra, but I'm really
mm,
glad that I've had this experience right now."
okay. Well, you definitely jumped in the deep end, bear hugged those rocks and made them your friends. Um when you're working on your models, where do you get your inspiration for your paint jobs, or if you're doing a diorama or a base, where do you go for inspiration? I know you're a big music person, but does that influence it at all?
You know, I mean, I think that just being informed by fantasy and sci-fi worlds and kind of the expectation that goes into them, I look at that and be like, well, I need to have, XYZ to get kind of the vibe, because I
Mm-hmm.
can't just do like the sand on the base. Like I've been working this conquest army right now, and I've been doing the dumbest bases because I just don't want to put the time into
Okay.
like a huge, rank and flank army because like I don't really know how the bases will line up. And
Mm-hmm.
it bothers me because like I usually like doing interesting things. I like doing like milliput and like texture rollers. I have all these cool tools that I've amassed and I haven't been doing it on this army. And it kind of bums me out because excuse me, I would like to have more time to do stuff like that. But mainly it's just like, you close your eyes and imagine what the battlefield you want it to look like or the environment that you want it to look like and just start trying to make it. So like the Kingdom Death stuff, I was like, yeah, there's supposed to be faces all over the ground, and you
Mm-hmm.
only have so much face stuff in there. So I kind of made like a stamp mold that I can make a couple little like repeating things. But then it's
Nice.
just like moss and dirt and like water effects and like gloss null oil and things to just like make them kind of grungy and something that like make it feel hostile.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's that sort of thing. Like and at tabletop length that none of it matters. It's all like when you're like looking at it right here, it's all fine, but like none of my friends ever notice the effort that I put into their models. So I don't
Yeah.
know.
All right. So is there a piece of art or an artist that inspires you to the point where you keep going back to it as like a reference for multiple projects?
Um, I think so. This is where like music would come into it for
Hmm.
me, and like Nine Inch Nails is probably like the one thing that whenever I need, just like, oh yeah, you can break all the rules and just like follow your heart sort of thing.
Yeah.
They're like the band that I listen to a lot, and specifically the keyboardist in the band, the synthesist. His name's Alessandro Cortini, and he does some of the most amazing stream of consciousness ambient synth stuff. It's
Okay.
incredible. Like he has an industrial project which I really dig, but like he has these like instrumental albums. He's got like 7 or 8 of them now, and they're incredible. Every single one of them is, and I'll just sit back and like just zone out to those and just like I said, is if I can get into the flow state while hobbying, which is harder to do on Twitch admittedly, although I have found a way to like balance those two things out. um I really like something where I can just really get lost in it. And so like a single piece of art, no, but like kind of like a genre of sound that just kind of like every time I listen to it I find something to be inspired by, and I find it to be really beautiful and soothing, and sometimes like awkward and uncomfortable. And I think that that plays into the horror of the grim dark future, any
Sure.
40K stuff it works great for, anything peaceful it works great for. It's just something that just kind of always sparks my imagination.
Awesome. So when over the last 3.5 years, can you share any Eureka moments you've had?
uh Figuring out not to use Vallejo primer through my airbrush was like a huge eureka moment,
Okay.
because like every time I'd use it, it would clog my airbrush, and I thought that airbrush was bad.
Oh.
Like once I realized that, like, I just have to run Stynylrez one because I couldn't get it for a while for some reason.
Mhm.
Once I got like actual airbrush primer, like I was like, oh, the airbrush can do so much more because it's not always clogged. And then like playing with things like inks through the airbrush, those were all like my huge, like, oh my God, like I can do so much stuff with these inks. And like this $8 pot, which is the same cost of like a teeny tiny contrast paint thing, I can do like 100 times the amount of work out of it,
Yeah.
and I get the same sort of effect out of it. I'm just like, inks are the way to go. And it's all kind of like the tools that I've kind of figured out. And so like airbrush and ink was like huge, but just getting that airbrush to actually work was like that first, like,
Okay.
oh my God, I can do this. So
So out of curiosity, what size is the needle on your airbrush?
uh so the one that I was clogging was
Uh-huh.
it was a point 0.5 Pash Talon. Well, it should have been fine. It should have been
Wow.
totally fine. It's huge. And
Yeah. That's like a garden
I
hose.
yeah, the thing was, it was really problematic. And
Wow.
I don't know what I was doing wrong. And I once I stopped using that airbrush too. It's
Mhm.
never been good. I've always had problems with it. Once I got even like my cheap Masters airbrush, it was better than this Pash one, and I don't know why. Once I got that, I took part of the Badger, birthday
Uh-huh.
purchasing airbrush thing, and got like a Sotar 2020. I've been using a
Yeah.
Chrome Renegade XL or something. Great airbrush. That thing, I have like so many people talk crap on it online. It's just been awesome for me.
The Renegade Chrome has been my go-to after because I the birthday celebration, I did the same thing. I picked up a Extreme Patriot 105,
Yeah, I got one of those too.
and then I picked up a Chrome from a buddy who bought his the previous birthday. So
Mm,
I got the Chrome, I got the 105. I've had a Sotar forever. But man, the Chrome is great. I really enjoy it. So
it's a real
that's
workhorse.
yeah. That's something airbrushes seem to be something that are very specific from person to person because I know people that hate Badger because they just can't get Badger to work for them. I've never had
Sure.
a problem with Badger. I know other people that use only Style and Res, and I use primarily Style and Res myself, and they can't get the Vallejo Surface primer to work, and other people swear by the Vallejo stuff. So it seems to be something weird about all of this that it just goes from person to person on what works best for them, and
Yeah.
more so than paintbrushes in some ways, which is really strange. What are you gonna do? I'm glad you figured
I,
something
you know,
out that works for you.
it's one of those problems with like, everybody has their way that they want to work with a product.
Yeah.
And like it makes me want to try a bunch of different things. I just don't have the money to like Harder and Steenbeck would be great. Minmax has been
Mm-hmm.
bragging about hers since she got it a couple months ago, and I'm just like, yeah, I want that, but like I just don't have the extra money to be throwing at that
Just
right
keep
now.
pushing the podcast, keep pushing your interviews. Eventually, get big enough where you can request one. There you
I
go.
mean, like, once people start sending me airbrushes to demo for free, like, that's when I'll know I've made it.
Awesome.
I have a cat that just, like, snuck into the room, but yet he's being creepy and not coming close. He's, like,
Oh,
hanging out, like, halfway through the room, and I have a chair for him. I always have a chair for him, but he just doesn't wanna come and hang out with me.
are you gonna make a? Do you have a cat cam for your stream?
I need to get
You
one.
need to do a
Now that
cat
I've seen
cam.
Giggling Geekettes one, like, that's one of the most brilliant things I have ever seen. I'm like, "Oh,
Cat cams are awesome.
cat cam."
All right. So right now, with all of the different tools you're using and the different discoveries you've made over the last couple of years, is there something that that kind of defines your style right now? I mean, everyone's style continues to grow and things, but is there an approach to color or priming or the way you work with light or the way you prep your models that is kind of unique to your style?
The one thing that I can say about my style versus, like, what feels to be the, common, thread of what, people are doing in the
Hmm.
hobby, um, the thing that I do differently is I like that 90s comic book style, like really gaudy colors, because they were still figuring out the,
Yeah,
computer shading and stuff. So like purple was like really purple and red was really red.
like
But then you
90s
have like
X-Man.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
And then you have like the Todd McFarlane inking and stuff like
Hmm.
that. So you then hit it with like really harsh contrast. Not like full on like epic duck style. Although I do want to try that one of these days. But like I really like that like super bright model look that then gets dropped down in a world that they're gonna get covered in gunk and like horror. It's just I find it really fun to look at. So that's kind of I think the difference right now where I'm at. And eventually it'll probably change. I'm leaning more towards fast, not
Okay.
blending brush strokes. I want things to like be a little bit more deconstructed feeling where
Okay.
like if I don't have to paint an arm, I'm gonna barely paint it. Like it'll just get a little like highlight and that's it. Because really it doesn't matter so much if like you can point a visual narrative to a different
Hmm.
part in the model. So I'm kind of playing with stuff like that right now.
Awesome. Are there any other artists that you're kind of looking to for how they executed that particular style? Because that is an uncommon style, but it's not a style that I've not seen before.
Yeah.
Um,
I just think that like I like looking at what everybody's doing and seeing what works and what doesn't.
okay.
Like I don't have any that's kind of the cool thing with me and I think why my podcast works the way it does is that I don't really have that the super fan sort of mentality with everybody because like I can see something in almost every single model online. I'm like, that is really cool, you did a great job on this specific thing. And those are all things that just like get locked into the memory.
Yeah.
And so like I don't know, like I really enjoy like certain people's paint styles, but like I never find myself being like, I want to do skin tones like Shoshi, because
Sure.
if I fumble it, like then I just have a shitty looking model. But like if I use her knowledge in a way that works in my style, then nobody can tell you you're doing it wrong if they don't know what you're doing is kind of the mentality I like to have. All right,
Awesome.
I gotta let this cat out. I'll be right
Okay.
back.
No worries. Hope everybody's doing well. Thank you guys so much for hanging out tonight. Appreciate it. We're gonna have a fantastic night.
He was digging into my terrain box. I'm like,
Oh,
okay, you
nope,
gotta
not acceptable. So when you're planning a new project and you've got your inspiration going, the music's going, or whatever you need, what's the first thing that you do? Like, do you yeah, like what's the first thing you do other than choosing the model?
go. If it's not already built, I build it.
Okay.
If I and then I look at it and go like, do I need sub assemblies? Which I hate. I hate sub assemblies. I don't understand. I, I have a lot of hot takes.
Okay.
Sub assemblies is a hot take. Like, why? Why? I like watch people like paint a Space Marine head on like a toothpick. I'm like, why? Once you put it into the Space Marine, his head is covered up like this. Like, why did you spend all that time on a head when you can't see it? You could enter it into competition and they're not going to notice this part. Like, they're not looking at your model and being like, you missed the taint. Like they don't care. They're looking at the model and being like, is this executed well? Is it like when they start seeing problems, yeah, maybe they'll dig deeper, but they aren't that concerned with it. And so it's like I can leave off very large parts of detail if they're
Hmm.
obscured. Like they would literally have to break your model to look at them. So
Sure.
like why spend all the time? And just so like the creature caster stuff, I find myself being like, if I can't see this, a judge is probably not going to see this. And like, so why spend the time? So if I don't have to paint in sub assemblies, I really will avoid it.
Okay. So you kind of assemble the model and then put as much of it together as you can. What about when you're deciding, when do you decide what kind of base you're going on? Because you talked before about, you envision what battlefield they're taking part in.
Right.
Where do those decisions come in? Where do those more creative, those decisions that you make as a creative person, um where did they come in your process?
They typically come in like right at the beginning. I
Okay.
like to I like to use sawdust as like my basing like so like wood glue or PVA or
Mhm.
super glue if I'm in a real hurry. And like I will just put it on the base and then I'll prime over it and I'll
Okay.
paint it. I rarely use like, excuse me, basing materials that are like the color of what I'm going to
Mhm.
do. And like I think that that's a really good way to speed up an army, but if you're like doing a one off, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to have this kind of matching ground like when I can paint the ground texture the
Sure.
way I want it. So like usually it starts then. And so like if the model is a one that I get to choose the pose, as I'm playing on the pose, I'm like, is the sword up? Is the gun out? Is whatever I'm doing there? Then it's like, is his leg up? Is he standing on a dead body? I that's when I start to play with the base, and especially if I get something like more than 40 mil, then I'll spend some good time on it, trying to just get like foreground background sort of thing, just so like it just doesn't feel like a model in the middle of a circle.
Sure. Gotcha. So, question about the age old argument. Do you prime and paint the model separate from the base and completely separate, or do you assemble the model and assemble the base and prime them at the same time while they're attached to each other?
A lot of the time together,
Okay.
just depending on so I just did one of those uh blood carrot night cats, and he had a stone base that I wanted to do a better job like dry brushing and making each stone kind of look unique, and
Mhm.
his cloak blocked out a lot of it, so I painted it like there was a shadow there, so the back end would be more obscured,
Yeah.
but like that I primed him at the same time. I just like then separated them and painted it and then
Mhm.
put them back on. But typically, like if I can get away with it, I like it all to be together. It just gives you something easier to hold on to than
Sure.
painting a thing, or like I did that Queen of Onslaught, and I did too much OSL stuff on it. And so I had to do it separately. And I was just like, I hate this. I'm wearing a glove trying to like balance it around. And like, I hate this. What am I doing? And the second I got it like glued to the base, I was like, thank you, because I actually had something solid I could hold on to.
Gotcha. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of advantages to both of them being together, but I can definitely see some disadvantages. It's always interesting to see how different painters approach that because it seems to be very style based, I think.
Sure.
And
Well, and do you ever get the problem when you like do the base separately and you put the feet on and then if one foot looks like it's floating or something dumb and
absolutely.
you're like,
Yeah.
Like, I don't like this, and I don't really want to go back and try to fix it after it's
Yeah,
all done. So that's why I like to do them together whenever I can, because like if it, I don't care if we get muck on the boots. They're out in like a battlefield. They're getting muck on the
sure,
boots.
sure.
So it's not
It's just pre-weathering, right?
right. Exactly. Exactly.
So I've heard people in your community reference something called grunge painting. What is this?
uh, Secretly, it is just a way for me to get things done in a faster time period.
Okay.
But I think that we all get way too in our heads about what we're gonna do with a model,
Mm-hmm.
and like I I'm much more of a punk kid, and I would love to say that this is punk painting, but punk had too much of a statement. It was too political, where
Okay.
grunge I think was more emotional and more artful, even though there were people like Eddie Vedder who was very political. Uh, like the difference between like like Rush versus Nirvana
Mm-hmm.
is that Rush is this like technical mastery,
Yeah.
and Nirvana could barely play their instruments on Bleach, but yet they changed the world. Like so, like why can't we do that in painting? Like why do you have to know how to properly blend everything if there's something that you can get an effect that you like, if you can get if you have a vision that you just want to execute on and not spend too much time. And so like part of the rules are like if it's a small model, give yourself an hour, see where you're at in an hour, and
Okay.
then if it's close enough, call it done. Like don't get mired into the details, and it doesn't mean that you can't come back later and clean it up, but at that point, I want you to like take the time to look at your model and be like, I did this and it is excellent. Or I did this and it is horrible. And understanding, being like self introspective of what you're doing. Like, so I was working on Zonia the other day. She to me looks unfinished. 3 hours. It's very good for 3 hours. But what I did notice is that the base looks awesome. The stone that I did looks great. And that's something that I did on accident because I left a huge brush stroke. And
Hmm.
I was like, what am I going to do with this brush stroke? And I was like, well, I'm going to paint it like sandstone. That's something I'd never done before. And that's something that I wouldn't have done if I wouldn't have been just like, we're doing it live. We got to get this done.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the idea of grunge painting. Like push yourself. Don't don't be too precious with your model. Like yeah, I know they all cost money, but you can't ruin it. You're not going to ruin it. Just get paint on it, follow your heart, follow your gut, look at it at the end of 3 hours. If you feel happy with it, put it away, move on to the next thing, try to learn something new, try a new technique. And then, give yourself a couple of weeks, a month with it, and then come back and be like, I want to make this skin better, and
Hmm.
then work on the skin. But like the idea of like, if you can feel good about it in a month, then why waste the extra 10 hours on it? Like, I don't understand that sort of mentality of us just being like, this one model is the most precious thing ever. Like, it isn't. It's just another thing that keeps you from your big pile of shame. So it's kind of my mentality with it right now.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for elaborating on that. I do like the idea of, if you're not trying to do a portfolio piece or if you're not trying to do like a competition piece,
Right.
bang stuff out. I
Just
like
bang
that.
it out. like paint and you know what? Do it for competition. Like I won a bronze medal on a model that I spent 4 hours on.
Oh wow.
Like I was just playing with a thing. And I was like, and I turned it in because it was done. Like literally it was one of the only models that I had done at the time. I was like, well, I'll just turn this in. And
Sure.
they're like, you did a great job on this. And I was like, really? So like, and the one model that I put 50 hours into also got a bronze. So it's like, who's to say what's right and wrong? Like they both looked cool. Why kill yourself over every piece?
Yeah,
They don't all have to be that.
that's great. Okay. So, what's something you want to try with a miniature but you're hesitant to try?
Um, I've mentioned it before, and I don't really know how to do it,
Okay.
but like 90s comic books are like
Mm-hmm.
my jam.
Mm-hmm.
Even though Frank Miller is a very problematic person, Sin City was a very formative comic book in my growing up. The stark black and white contrast
Yeah.
was so cool. Like I want to do that, but in 3D. So like every surface is white. Every surface is white except for like the black, bullet hole going through somebody's head, something like that.
There's
But I
no
don't know how to do
gradients,
it.
no grays, just white and then stark black with harsh shadow lines, like harsh.
Exactly. No, just as sharp as you could be with like one thing of color.
Yeah,
So whether that's like that's the blood or whatever it's going to be,
sure.
it's got to be. I want to do that, but I don't know how to execute on that yet. So it's the one thing I keep on dreaming about. One of these days I will come up with the idea. I'll figure it out. But right now it's just a dream.
Yeah, I can see how you could take off from quote unquote regular comic book style because a couple of people did like Mike Mignola style, which is very
Yeah,
similar to Frank Miller, but obviously it has
very
more
similar.
color and a little bit more gradient to it. So if you can get used to doing like Epic Duck style and then try Mac Mignola's and then go to Frank Miller, I think you could do it. Um, but I definitely see the difficulty of figuring out where those shadows are going to be because that shadow placement's going to be massive. Like that's going to be
And
super
you have
important.
to do it right. It
Yeah,
like if you do it even a little bit wrong, the whole thing's ruined.
yeah,
So it's kind of one of
absolutely.
those like I'll have to like probably build the diorama,
Mm-hmm.
take a photo of the angle that I want it, and do that into harsh black and white,
Yeah,
and then try to recreate that. And that's something I've never done. So it's just like
I,
finding the piece to do
yeah.
and then finding the time to actually set up the pieces to do it. Because like in the end, it'll be like 3 colors, which
Mm-hmm.
to some people would be like, "That's not that cool." But if you can get it at the right spot and take
Oh,
a three-dimensional thing and basically turn it 2D, like, I'm excited.
yeah, that could look absolutely amazing. I want to see you do that.
Okay, cool. I'm glad. You're the only person who seems excited about that.
Really?
Every time I mention it, everybody's like, "Eh," and I'm like, "Dude, I think that this will be cool."
I think no, I think that could be really cool. It could also be a massive disaster, but I honestly think it could be really cool.
Well, we'll know one of these days.
Yeah. All right. So, as a miniature painter, what's the biggest challenge you've faced so far?
Um, I think I think just the comfort with it. So, like, I was never an artist.
Hmm.
I am a horrible 2D artist. That was never nurtured in me. I was a musician, and for me, kind of never the two shall meet. And so, being in my late 30s, like learning a whole new thing as my eyes are slowly not working the way I want them to, like getting comfortable with putting paint on a model, starting off using like only Army Painter and Reaper paints,
Hmm.
from like their old kits and stuff. Like I was having a lot of troubles just getting comfortable with the models and the paint. And once I got comfortable with the process and how to load just even like the like easy things of loading paint on a paintbrush,
Hmm.
it takes a little bit of skill to figure out how you like to paint. And my mother-in-law is an artist, so I've picked her brain quite a bit over the past about what she likes and how she does it, and she inevitably tells me I'm doing just about everything wrong, but she loves the outcome, so like we just don't talk about the middle part.
All right. That is definitely getting all of those basics down, especially as someone I've never been a super artistic person either. I'm a very analytical person. I've had to approach painting from very analytical point of view, like light, hits the model because light works in X, Y, and Z ways. And therefore it refracts in certain ways, or it hits certain
Sure.
surfaces because of overhangs and things like that. Like, I have to understand that before I can just do it. I can't just, you know,
Just do it.
this
Yeah.
looks right.
But
Like, that doesn't make sense to me.
but the analytical eye and mind is something that I think a lot of us don't have. Like, we don't
Hmm.
look at our environment and understand why our living room makes us feel good and doesn't make us feel good. Like, I think that we are all like a little too wrapped up in like the stuff and not what the stuff does.
Okay.
And so I think having that analytical mind, it allows you to actually be like way ahead of the curve. It allows you to like nail techniques that other people are still struggling with because they don't think about cascading lights,
Hmm.
and stuff like that. And so highlight places placement is difficult. And I'm like, look at my skin. Like, where are the hot spots? Like, what's going on here? I'm not just pink. Like, I mean, I'm pink as hell, but like what what is this? Like, why is this shiny? It's because I'm oily. What does that
Yeah.
do to and like just getting people to stop and think about that is if you just take a couple minutes to like be quiet and look at your environment and look at how light is bouncing off of stuff, you'll be an awesome miniature painter. You just need to stop and look at it, and like take in what you're doing because painting isn't really painting. It is causing light to reflect back at your eye.
Hmm.
And if you've painted it wrong, it's because you don't understand what light is supposed to be doing there. And the scale's just different.
Yeah.
That's the trick.
It's all optical illusions.
Exactly.
That's what we're doing.
Exactly.
Highlights and shadows and midtones, they're all optical illusions to trick your
Yep.
brain into thinking that miniature is bigger than it is, and light's going to affect it in the same way it would if the person was like in, you know, life-size proportions. We're
Truth.
literally
We're
lying to each other's eyes. That's the point.
yeah, yeah. We're magicians. And that's really what it is. And I try to like get people to like feel comfortable with that term,
Yeah.
but it's true. Like we're we are literally lying to you with our colors.
Are you saying
They
that
are
we're wizards?
oh, we are
Mm.
absolutely wizards.
Awesome. All right. So far, what has been your biggest disappointment or failure on a project?
I don't think I've had one like in the like I've had things that I just didn't like the way they looked.
Okay.
But I've never had like a straight up failure. Like I've repainted my Phoenix from Kingdom Death 3 times.
Okay.
But like each time was to the best of my abilities at the time I did it. And the first time just like when I looked at it, 6 months later I was like, "Oof, oof, like this is not good. Like your color theory is all wrong through here." And then so
Mm,
I just primed back over it. All of you guys that just like strip your models, stop it. Just prime over it. Like seriously, like unless you like painted on it super thick, just prime over it. Stop like or just add paint on top of it. Why do you have to strip a model? It's just an extra step of you not getting the paint on your model the way that you want it. And like you, I don't know, like I don't they aren't precious to me. They're just
mm,
toys. They're just stuff. And so like I've never looked at one as like an Everest. Like I've never been like this is the thing that I need to conquer and because to me they're all like learning blocks, so
gotcha.
everyone like yeah, like I'm not going to go out and buy another Phoenix, so I'm going to repaint it if I don't like it. But like every step of the way, I felt like I had a huge victory from the step before. Like, so I don't know. Like, I think I look very differently at the thing that we do. Like
Yeah.
even if I don't win a gold at competition, the fact that I even am doing it and people are looking at it and think it's good is like brilliant to me. Even if I don't place, I had like several things not place, and I was like, at least I did it, and
Yeah.
other people looked at
You
it.
were there and people saw it.
Right, exactly.
No, I think that mindset is really, I, I think it's more common than most people realize, but within the competitive or super high end painting scene, I think that your point of view is a little less
Sure.
common because a lot of people do look at these miniatures that they've completed as individual pieces of like work that stand by themselves, and once they're done, that's part of my portfolio and I don't change that. Like
Sure.
that's like I'm sure plenty of high level artists do this, but it's like Picasso showing a one of his finished pieces of work at a gallery, and then later he paints over it and paints something completely different on top of that same canvas. I think some miniature painters would look at it like that. Um, but ultimately it's the artist's decision and what they're comfortable with and what they want to do. So I
Yeah.
think it's
And like, what are you gonna do with these? Are you selling them for $1 million? Because if you are, like, yeah, don't paint over them. But like, if they're just yours and they're in your shelf and you feel that you've gotten better, like, here's a prime example. I busted my ass for Resin Beast 2020
yeah.
back for Adepticon. I got this model that I was really thrilled about. And everybody's like, "Well, you could always bring it to the next one." And I was like, "Why would I bring this model to the next Resin Beast? Like, why would I do that?" And like, "Because you already did it." It's like, "Yeah, but by the next Resin Beast, I'm gonna be a better painter.
Yeah,
Like, why would I not do a better piece?"
that's
And
valid.
everybody's like nobody was thinking of it that way.
Mhm.
There's a mentality, and I was talking with Minmax about this the other day, and she used the perfect term that it is, people like to think of things from a state of poverty. Like there's only ever going to be so many good models that you produce.
Mm.
And the way I look at it is my next model is always going to be the best model I produce. Like it's an unending well of stuff to go back to. And if like this one is your like magnum opus, like like that's a really disappointing thing because it means like your next one's not going to be as fun and the one after that's not going to be as fun. Like
That is
I
valid.
think that you should look at everything like I'm going to learn stuff, I'm going to have fun with this. This is a lifetime hobby. It is not a sprint, it is a marathon. You are in it for the long haul, so just enjoy it while it's here and while your eyes are still working.
Yeah, it's kind of important. I think that's a really good perspective. I think that's a really good way of looking at things, that the next piece is your next best piece.
I feel
And
so bad that I'm just calling out people for stripping models, and someone in this chat is like, "As I'm stripping models while watching this." Like,
it's a personal decision.
it's just a personal decision. I'm very sorry for calling you out. But next time, just try priming over it.
What's something you did that you think you did really, really well at, but nobody noticed?
Uh, I
As long as we're throwing shade.
so the one thing that I know I did really well at, I was working a Kingdom Death, commission last year,
Hmm.
and I did I should have just traded out my antelope versus theirs because they never would have known the difference. Like they didn't know that my antelope, like I painted them very similar,
Uh huh.
but I did this like diorama base where I used like the woodland scenics water effect, and I had made this little like bubbling brook growing through this little tiny base, and I just did this whole thing, and I like worked for like almost 2 weeks trying to get that water the way I wanted it to. When I showed him, he's like, "Yeah, that's cool." I was
Oh.
like I should have given you mine. Like this one, I'm like really proud of this, and you just like the effort, just like way whatever. It's cool.
Ouch. Yeah,
I mean, I was trying something. I learned something. I
that's
had fun
good,
doing it, but still.
but still. What's the biggest risk you've taken on a miniature project that's paid off for you?
Uh, oils. The
Okay.
these guys, Mr. Weathering, multi-black oil washes and
Hmm.
stuff like that, because they grime up a model instantly. But like you can play with them and manipulate them in such a way, and then go back over and throw a coat of varnish over top of them, and then incorporate it into the grime of a model. Like I thought I'd ruined a piece with it. I was like, ooh, this is bad. This is really bad. I got it all over. I got it all over the skin.
Yeah.
But after like spending like 20 minutes just kind of manipulating and getting it right, like it was one of those I was like, brilliant product. Absolutely brilliant. Just take your time to get it right. Like otherwise it can be a little scary.
Awesome. Do you have any words of advice for people who want to try oils?
So like I am terrified of the full oil experience. Like
Hmm.
I think that James Waffle doing it great. I love watching Eni doing it. I think that it's exciting seeing people use a new medium. I am never going to do oils that way. I just
Okay.
I don't have a week to wait for something to dry. Like
That is
there's
fair.
just like that whole thing. I'm like, no, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna wait. I'm not gonna I like working too much all over the model, and I'm not good enough. Like I've watched Waffle do it, and I've just been like, wow, this is impressive. I'm not that I don't have that much care. And so like
Hmm.
I need acrylics. I need them to dry. But for using oil in things like washes and
Hmm.
shades and filters, they're really, really unique. And there's like, okay, so here's really what it is. Stop reading White Dwarf and what they tell you to do, and go look at like scale modeling. Look at the what is the grim dark Warhammer thing where they do all the Blanchetsu stuff.
Inquisition 28 and Planchitsu. Yeah.
There we go. Look at those things and like go, okay, like this is a cool technique. Where did they get this from? It's from scale modeling. It's from, historical wargaming.
Yeah.
Start looking at different, communities and trying to understand what makes their models look good and their dioramas look good, and incorporate them into yours, because they're all using enamels and oils and
Hmm.
things and pigments. Like go deep. There's so much cool stuff out there. Just like learn. I mean, like the Gundam people have so many things that would be brilliant for Space Marines players, but like
Yep.
how many Space Marines players are learning Gundam stuff,
Oh,
That sort of
go out and steal unashamedly.
right. Right.
Do not be ashamed. Steal from everywhere.
Right.
All right. So, what's been your biggest, looking back on the last couple of years, what's been the biggest triumph for you?
E- Easily the biggest triumph was getting done with my Rising Sun commission,
Mm.
which I thought that that was going to be like, I'm painting 7 models from the core Rising Sun box
Oh,
for a
no.
friend. I did like all 38 of I can't even remember what they're called. I banned them all from my memory. Like all the they're not kaiju, they are the
all the,
spirit god things.
yeah, you
I
did
can't
all the
remember.
lucky gods and you did all the gods and the monsters.
Yeah, I did them all. The only things I didn't do were the little like troop guys. He
Hmm.
didn't want those because they were in colored plastic. And I was like,
Sure.
thank you. Thank you. But I mean, that took me 6 months. And by the end, I was glad. I learned so much cool stuff. I That's how I met MinMax, like
Hmm.
because we are literally painting the same models at the same time. And so like I made good friends while doing it. But that was like I was so ready for that commission to be over, and I way undercharged, like
Mm.
way undercharged. And so after that, I'm just like, I'm never doing that again. I have to always make money.
Yep. We live and learn.
Yep.
It's good to know because I have all of the Sun stuff up on a shelf that I'm going to break out someday and paint because they're beautiful models. But
Some of them are awesome. Like I think the Onis, that's what they're called, the Onis.
mm-hmm.
The Oni
Yeah.
of skulls is the blue the big blue guy,
Mm-hmm.
he was he was so much fun to paint. Like I just like that's one that would like I would probably paint him one more time, especially now that I have all these cool pro acryl paints where like
There you
blue is
go.
so much more fun to like use. But like that model, like he's got like little faces on his knees. He's just a cool model. Like I had a really good time painting him.
That's, that's awesome. I think it would definitely be cool for you to get, see if you can pick him up as a single and just see how well you do.
It would be a whole new world. The guy who I painted him for, good friend of mine, he didn't want me to do anything cool with the bases. And so
Oh,
like I just had like painted like gray platforms with black
mm-hmm.
rims. And I was like, I would love to see this guy on like stepping on like a samurai or something cool. Like
Yeah,
he's just like a badass model. Yeah, that was one of my first big ones that I was like, yep, I really love doing this.
that's awesome. All right. So why do you continue to paint miniatures? You're into music. You've done a lot of other things. What is it about miniatures that bring you back?
I I mean, I like painting. I like
Mm-hmm.
the community. I like the models. I like the games. Like my wife is always shocked at like how many hobbies I've done and, from music to close-up card magic. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've done a lot of weird things in my life. And she was always like, "You never really seem to like click with the community. You make friends, but you don't like really love what everybody's doing." And I'm like, "Well, I don't love what everybody's doing in minis either." And she's like, "Yeah, but you love the mini community." Like that is true. I very much do. And so like I think that this has like the perfect amount of cross section of like creative people and like altruistic minds. Like everybody wants to
Mm-hmm.
help somebody. Nobody is saying, I don't want you to learn how to paint like me because you're going to beat me in a competition.
Mm-hmm.
Where like everybody in music's like, I don't want you to learn my songs and learn my style because I want to get famous doing this one thing. And
Gotcha.
with the exception of like the Squidmars, the Miniacs of the world, Brent, Goobertown,
Mm-hmm.
we are none of us are going to get famous and or rich. Like we are all going to do this thing because we are really passionate about it and we're passionate about the community that we are in. And while we may make friends, we might touch people, we might talk to really cool people and send it out in podcast or YouTube form for people to feel good and connected to the artist. But like we will truly be doing it because we just love it. And I love seeing people do great things. I've seen painters being like, I've been only doing this for 6 months and they are crushing it. I'm just like,
Yeah.
this is so inspiring to me. Like I love this. Every time I see someone do a good job, it just like makes me excited to do my next good job. I don't know. I love it.
Yeah. And I've been involved in Warhammer and on and off painting for over 20 years. There was definitely a few year gap in there, but when I see people who have only been painting for a few years blowing me out of the water, like I'm like, okay, I need to sit down in front of you and you tell me, teach me, because I'm obviously not learning as fast, and that's fine, but
Sure.
what am I missing? Please help me, because you're right. We're a very supportive community, and I think we're becoming more and more supportive. There was a time where painters weren't talking to each other, like at all.
Oh, really?
There was definitely a time. A lot of the longtime commission painters or longtime competitive painters have told me about it. That at one point, no one really talked to one another because the internet wasn't a thing, and people protected their secrets, especially
Uh,
well before the internet started, or the internet was a major thing. At
sure.
that time, people protected their secrets because it kept them at the top of the pack. The internet's changed that a lot, and
Yeah.
we've just grown into this incredibly, mostly very supportive community that I'm very proud to be part of. So
Yeah.
it's
It's
been awesome.
I don't think people understand it unless if you've done other hobbies where there are people actively working to like, in music, there are people actively working to get your spot on a bill all the
Hmm.
time. And
Sure.
like, it just feels weird to always have a target on your back. And I don't feel like that here. The target that's on me is because I put it here
Sure.
because I go out and I talk to people and I say some fucking spicy shit. And I've been called out a bunch and I love it. Like those are the conversations that I want to have with people because
Yeah.
if we're not talking, we're not thinking these things, and somebody can't defend the reason why they're doing something, then we need to really look at why we're doing it. And if you can give me a good response. Like I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to be like wrong about my assumptions on something
Yeah.
because it means that I didn't understand it. And now I do. And that is a gift that someone has given to me. And if somebody thinks that like this is the only way to do something and they can have that moment of like oh my god, I just learned something new or this thing challenged me and I tried it and you're right. Like that's huge. Those are moments of
Absolutely.
growth and that's all I want people to do is grow.
Absolutely. Right there with you. So, what's been the best piece of advice you've received regarding painting miniatures?
I mean, I think just like because I came up from the YouTube community
Hmm.
watching, like, m my best piece of advice is, like, I bet you Vince Venturella did a video on it, like, it's like that, like, don't ever think that there isn't somebody else who hasn't already tried something that you want to learn and
Yeah.
has probably made a good video about it, like, I think that that's the advice, like, never think that what you want to do, you're the only person who have thought of it, like, I
Hmm.
know that my Frank Miller idea I'm not the only person who have thought about doing something like that. Will I be the first to execute it? Who knows? If I'm not, I don't care. I like actually someone do it for me so I can see how it turns
Yeah.
out.
You still want to do it regardless.
Right, right. I'm gonna try it, but like like, don't be afraid to look for help. And before you ask a question that could be Googled, Google it. People actually really like
Yeah.
that.
It's amazing how much it cuts down on repeat questions if people Google things first. But hey.
It's every YouTuber that has great tutorials also has a list of all the tools that they use. Just click that list, look at it,
Yeah.
do a little bit of research.
So I know before you said that every miniature is you're making it better than the one before that, and you don't really have, kind of like a magnum opus piece, but do you have a unicorn project? Like if time and money were no barrier, is there a particular project that right now you would just love to do?
So there's this guy, I believe his name is A Demov or something.
Hmm.
He does those giant titans out of Russia.
Yeah.
Um, like I want to paint a giant warlord titan and time and money, like if I could just do whatever I want and work on it for like 40 hours a week and like just only do that for a job.
Yeah.
I wanted to do a titan where it is in the triptych of in the garden of earthly delights by Hieronymus Bosch,
Hmm.
where one side would be the hell side, and I would be like playing with like a little bit of like chaos, space marine, like iconography on the big panels, but then like you have like your heaven side, and you have this like whole scene of butts and weird bugs, and like I love that painting so much. And I really want to see it incorporated on a mini for some reason. And I think you could only do it on a mini that's like 2 feet tall.
Awesome.
At least properly do it.
That would be a heck of a Titan, man. All right. So where can we find you online?
Online is very easy. You search my name and you will find my YouTube channel, because my YouTube channel is just my name, Heath Aldrich. You can search Hobby Time in the Murder Basement. That'll take you to me as well. I am on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher. Literally, I think I'm on every podcast platform, Hobby Time in the Murder Basement. And you can go back. I think I'm now at like 33 episodes up now. Um, and I'm going to keep on putting out one a week until I literally can't do it anymore.
Awesome.
Which I think you understand that feeling. You're like, I'm going to do it, hell or high water. This is
Yeah.
going to happen. Um, and if you find my music while searching me and decide that you want to listen to some of that, that's pretty cool. Like I'm done with the pseudonyms and that making it hard to find me. Just
Mhm.
search my name, you will find me.
Awesome. Well, Heath, I want to say thank you so much for coming onto the miniature podcast. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you for making it through another episode of Hobby Time in the Murder Basement. I really appreciate your support. If you'd like to continue the support in other ways, I do have a Patreon. The link is down below. Proceeds from that will go to pay for new equipment, subscription fees if I need it, and graphic design stuff. I'd like to help build this channel. So any of your support is, while never necessary, is always appreciated. If you want to see more hobby stuff, you can head on over to Twitch. I generally stream on Sundays at noon. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.